The sky burned red over Washington, D.C. as the Krell Dominion ships broke through Earth's atmosphere. Their massive dark hulls blocked out the sun, casting shadows across the panicking city below. It had been 3 days since the alien fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system. 3 days of failed diplomacy, ultimatums, and finally, war. Colonel Jack Murphy stood on the roof of the Pentagon, binoculars trained on the enemy vessels. His weathered face remained calm despite the chaos around him. 20 years in the Army had taught him to control his fear, but even he had never imagined facing an enemy from beyond the stars. "Sir, we've lost contact with the lunar base," said Lieutenant Frank Wilson, his voice breaking. "European air defenses are down too." Murphy lowered his binoculars. "What about our orbital platforms? The last one went dark 10 minutes ago. We're blind up there now." Murphy nodded grimly. Humanity's first line of defense, gone in hours. He watched as smaller Krell ships deployed from the main vessels, streaking toward major cities around the globe. "Get me General Peterson. We need to pull back our Air Force. They're being slaughtered up there." In the White House Situation Room, President Olivia Clark faced the assembled Joint Chiefs. The room fell silent as screens showed live footage of Krell ships decimating military bases across the country. "Madam President," began the Secretary of Defense, "conventional weapons are having minimal effect. Their shield technology is unlike anything we've ever seen." President Clark's eyes remained fixed on the screens. "What about nuclear options?" "We launched 2 ICBMs as a test. The Krell intercepted them before they reached the stratosphere." Clark closed her eyes briefly. "Then we need to be smarter than them. We need a different approach." Across the city at Georgetown University, Dr. Lisa Bennett worked frantically in her lab. The physics professor had been analyzing data from the early Krell attacks when she noticed something strange. "Look at this wavelength pattern," she told her research assistant, pointing at her computer screen. "Every time our weapons make even slight contact with their shields, there's this energy fluctuation." "What does it mean?" asked the assistant, staring at the complex readings. "I'm not sure yet, but it could be important. Their shields seem to resonate at this specific frequency." Dr. Bennett's hands flew across her keyboard. "If we could generate a matching counter-frequency." Her work was interrupted by the building shaking violently. Through the window, she saw a Krell fighter craft shooting blue energy beams at nearby structures. "We need to get this data to the military," she said, quickly downloading her findings to a portable drive. As night fell, Colonel Murphy directed evacuations from a makeshift command center. Reports flooded in from around the world. New York under siege, London burning, Beijing gone dark. Earth's military forces were scattered and losing ground everywhere. "Colonel, call the communications officer. We're getting a direct broadcast from the Krell. They're demanding immediate and unconditional surrender." "Put it through," Murphy ordered. A holographic image appeared, showing a tall, gray-skinned being with 4 glowing eyes. It spoke in perfect English. "Your resistance is futile and illogical. The Dominion requires your world. Surrender now, and a portion of your species will be preserved to serve." President Clark, now speaking from a secure bunker, responded with steel in her voice. "Humanity does not surrender. We will fight for our home until the last person standing." The Krell commander made a gesture that might have been amusement. "Then you will be exterminated. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Yours is nothing special." As the transmission ended, Earth's orbital defense satellites, humanity's last line of defense, began exploding one by one. Fiery debris rained down through the atmosphere, visible from the ground as shooting stars. Colonel Murphy watched this final defeat with clenched fists. "We're not done yet," he whispered to himself. "This is just the beginning." 6 weeks after the invasion, Colonel Jack Murphy stood at the entrance of what used to be the NORAD facility inside Cheyenne Mountain. Now it served as the main base for Earth's growing resistance movement. The massive steel doors, designed decades ago to withstand nuclear blasts, had so far hidden them from Krell detection. "The generator repairs are complete, sir," reported Sergeant Diane Miller. "We've got power for communications and the medical bay again." Murphy nodded. "Good. What about our new arrivals?" "They're being processed now. 23 civilians and 7 military personnel who escaped the Denver containment zone." Murphy made his way through the dimly lit corridors. What had once been a state-of-the-art military installation now resembled a refugee camp. Families huddled in corners, children played quietly, and wounded soldiers recovered on makeshift beds. But despite their desperate situation, there was something else in the air: determination. In the former command center, Captain Daniel Wright hunched over maps with other resistance leaders. The young Air Force pilot had become a legend after shooting down 3 Krell fighters with his F-35 before crash landing in the Colorado wilderness. "Colonel," Wright said, standing as Murphy entered, "we've confirmed resistance cells in these locations." He pointed to marks scattered across the map of North America. "Most are military remnants, but civilian groups are organizing too." "What about overseas?" Murphy asked. Wright's expression darkened. "Communications are spotty, but we've made contact with groups in the European Alps, the Ural Mountains, and scattered places in Asia. Australia seems to have several strong cells operating." "And the Krell?" "They've established control centers in major cities. They're using human collaborators to manage the population, offering food and protection in exchange for obedience and labor." Murphy's jaw tightened. The thought of humans working with the invaders made his blood boil, but he understood fear could drive people to desperate choices. In another section of the base, Dr. Lisa Bennett had transformed a storage room into a laboratory. Her escape from Washington had been narrow, but she'd managed to bring critical research data with her. "Dr. Bennett," Murphy called as he entered, "I hear you requested to see me." She looked up from her work, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept in days. "Colonel, I need your help. I've been analyzing the Krell shield technology, and I'm convinced there's a vulnerability. But I need more data, and I need equipment." "What kind of equipment?" "I need components to build specialized sensors, and ideally, I need access to Krell technology itself." She paused. "I know it's asking a lot." Murphy considered this. "Actually, we might be able to help." Captain Wright reported a downed Krell scout ship in the San Juan Mountains. "It's risky, but we could organize a salvage mission." Before Bennett could respond, Specialist Amanda Nelson burst into the room. The young communications expert's face was flushed with excitement. "Colonel, I've done it. I've cracked their communication encryption." She held up a tablet. "I've been monitoring their transmissions for weeks. Listen to this." She played a recording of the alien language, followed by a rough translation. "Sector 7 resource extraction behind schedule. Human resistance stronger than anticipated. Request additional security forces." Murphy's eyes widened. "Can you track their communications patterns? Figure out their command structure?" "Already working on it, sir," Nelson replied. "And there's something else. They keep referring to Earth as the Nexus Point and discussing something called the Aldari Blockade. I think we might be part of something bigger." Later that night, Murphy stood alone at a viewpoint overlooking the darkened landscape. In the distance, the lights of a Krell patrol ship moved slowly across the sky. Once they had seemed invincible, but now he saw a glimmer of hope. "They can be fought," he whispered to himself. "They can be beaten." The resistance was growing stronger, and soon they would strike back. Dr. Lisa Bennett stared at her computer screen in disbelief. After 3 months of studying the salvaged Krell technology, she had finally found something. Her hands trembled as she reviewed the data again, making sure she wasn't mistaken. "This can't be right," she muttered, running the simulation one more time. The results remained the same. She grabbed her notes and rushed through the underground corridors of the resistance base. Soldiers and civilians moved aside as she ran past them. Sensing her urgency, she found Colonel Murphy in the war room, discussing patrol routes with Captain Wright. "Colonel, I found it," Dr. Bennett burst out, breathing hard. the weakness in their shields. Murphy and Wright turned to her immediately. "Show me," Murphy said. Bennett spread her notes across the table. "The Krell shields operate on a quantum frequency that shifts constantly. That's why our weapons can't penetrate them. But there's a pattern to the shifts, and more importantly, a specific radiation frequency that disrupts the entire system." "In simpler terms," Dr. Wright said, leaning forward, "their shields are allergic to a specific type of radiation. Hit them with it, and their defenses fall apart." She pointed to a series of equations. "We need to build emitters that can generate this exact frequency." Murphy studied the notes. "Can we weaponize this?" "With the right equipment, yes. But I'll need help." Bennett looked up. "I need an engineer who understands both our technology and what we've learned about theirs." "I know someone," Murphy said after a moment. "Steve Martinez. He was developing experimental weapons for DARPA before the invasion. Last report had him hiding in what's left of Boulder." 3 days later, a resistance team returned with Steve Martinez. The engineer was thinner than his file photo, with a new scar running down his cheek, but his eyes lit up when Dr. Bennett explained her discovery. "This is brilliant," Martinez said, examining her work. "If we modify military-grade microwave emitters with these specifications, we could create portable weapons that disable their shields. Given enough power, we might even build larger versions to protect our bases." While Bennett and Martinez began their work, Specialist Amanda Nelson made another breakthrough in the communication center. "Colonel, you need to hear this," she called as Murphy passed by. She played a recent intercepted transmission from a Krell commander. "Earth control is essential to secure the hyperspace corridor against Aldari forces," the translated voice said. "The Coalition fleet approaches the Arcturus checkpoint. The Supreme Command demands we establish full dominance before they arrive." "They're afraid of someone," Murphy realized. "These Aldari they keep mentioning. They're fighting another war elsewhere." "That's not all," Nelson continued. "I've been mapping their communications network. Earth isn't just another conquest for them. It's strategically vital to their position in some larger conflict. We're like a bridge they need to control." Murphy's mind raced with the implications. If Earth is so important, and there's another force out there fighting the Krell, then we might have potential allies. Wright finished. That night, as Bennett and Martinez worked on their prototype weapon, a resistance patrol brought in startling news. They had discovered a crashed ship in the mountains, but it wasn't Krell. The design was completely different. Murphy led a team to investigate. The ship was smaller than Krell vessels, with smooth silver-blue surfaces instead of the Krell's black angular designs. Inside, they found a wounded pilot, humanoid, but clearly alien, with pale blue skin and silver eyes. The being looked at Murphy and spoke in halting English. "I am Cynthia, observer for Aldari Coalition. We have watched your resistance, brave humans." The alien winced in pain. "My people fight Krell Dominion across many stars. Earth is vital junction. The Dominion must not control it." Murphy exchanged shocked glances with Wright. "You're saying we're part of a galactic war?" The alien nodded weakly. "And soon, Earth will be its center." The prototype weapon looked unimpressive. A bulky modified microwave emitter attached to a military-grade battery pack. But as Dr. Bennett aimed it at the captured Krell shield generator, everyone in the underground testing chamber held their breath. 3, 2, 1. She counted down and pressed the firing button. A high-pitched hum filled the room as invisible radiation streamed toward the shield. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Krell shield flickered, turned from blue to purple, and suddenly collapsed completely. "It works," Steve Martinez shouted, pumping his fist in the air. "The shield is down." Colonel Murphy stepped forward to inspect the results, his face breaking into a rare smile. "How many of these can you build?" "With our current supplies, maybe 24," Martinez replied. "But they're heavy, and the range is limited to about 50 yards." "It's a start," Murphy said. "Begin production immediately." Over the next 2 weeks, resistance cells around North America received the designs for what they called shield breakers. Small machine shops hidden in basements and abandoned factories began producing components. Meanwhile, Captain Wright worked with a different kind of weapon. In a secluded valley, he trained pilots to fly a squadron of salvaged military aircraft, now modified with technology from the crashed Aldari ship. "The controls are more responsive now," he explained to a group of nervous pilots. "And the Aldari stealth coating should keep us invisible to Krell sensors until we're right on top of them." One pilot raised her hand. "Sir, without airbases, where do we land after missions?" Wright pointed to a holographic map. "We've established 5 hidden runways in remote areas. After each mission, we scatter to different locations." While the resistance prepared, Specialist Amanda Nelson continued monitoring Krell communications. One evening, she burst into Murphy's office. "Sir, I've intercepted something big. The Krell are planning a major operation in Chicago in 3 days. They're gathering supplies from across the region for shipment off-world." Murphy studied the intelligence. "This could be our opportunity for a first real strike. If we hit them during this operation, we could disrupt their supply lines and show the world they're not invincible." President Olivia Clark, who had been operating from a mobile command center that changed location weekly, joined the planning via secure video link. "This is risky, Colonel," she said, her face grim on the screen. "But I agree it's time to show the world that humanity still fights. I'm authorizing the mission and coordinating with resistance groups nationwide to launch simultaneous smaller attacks." The plan was set. Shield breakers were distributed to strike teams. Wright's pilots prepared their aircraft. Resistance cells across the country readied for coordinated attacks on Krell outposts. The morning of the attack, Murphy addressed the strike force in the mountain base. "Today, we show the Krell that taking our planet won't be easy. Many of you won't return. But remember what we're fighting for, not just our survival, but our freedom." The battle for Chicago began at dawn. Wright's squadron struck first, appearing suddenly on Krell sensors as they dove toward the alien ships at the city's port facility. The modified Earth fighters fired missiles that penetrated the surprised Krell vessels' shields. On the ground, Murphy led teams equipped with shield breakers through the ruined streets. When they encountered Krell patrols, the aliens' seemingly impenetrable protection failed, leaving them vulnerable to conventional weapons. Team 2 moved to the warehouse district. Murphy ordered over the radio as he fired at an exposed Krell soldier. Team 3 secured the command center. By midday, the resistance controlled half the city. Krell reinforcements arrived, but fell into prepared ambushes. Across the country, smaller resistance cells attacked Krell outposts, creating chaos in the alien command structure. As evening approached, Krell Commander Vexnar watched from his flagship as humans celebrated in Chicago's streets. For the first time since the invasion, the aliens were retreating. "Send emergency transmission to the Dominion fleet," Vexnar ordered his subordinates. "The human resistance is stronger than anticipated. Request immediate reinforcements." The battle for Earth had truly begun. The Aldari delegation arrived 3 days after the Chicago victory. Their ship, an elegant vessel shaped like a crescent moon, landed in a hidden valley near the resistance headquarters. Colonel Murphy, President Clark, and Dr. Bennett waited as the ship's entrance opened and 5 blue-skinned figures emerged. The lead Aldari stepped forward. Unlike Cynthia, the injured scout they had rescued earlier, this one stood tall and confident. She wore a silver uniform with complex markings. "I am Ambassador Lyra of the Aldari Coalition," she said in perfect English. "We come offering alliance against our common enemy." President Clark stepped forward. "We welcome your help, Ambassador. The Krell have devastated our world." Inside the mountain base, the humans and Aldari gathered around holographic displays. Ambassador Lyra activated a device that showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. For 30 years, the Aldari Coalition has fought the Krell Dominion across this region of space, Lyra explained. We were winning until the Krell discovered your solar system. She zoomed in on Earth's position. Your planet sits at a crucial hyperspace junction, connecting 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Whoever controls Earth controls movement across 20% of known space. Murphy studied the map. So Earth is like a strategic crossroads. Precisely, Lyra nodded. The Krell invaded you to secure this advantage. If they maintain control here, they can block our fleet movements and potentially win the wider war. President Clark's expression hardened. Then it's not just about saving our planet anymore. The entire galaxy is at stake. Our Coalition Council has authorized full military support for Earth, Lyra continued. We can provide technology, weapons, and training. In return, we ask that Earth formally join the Aldari Coalition. What would that mean for us? Dr. Bennett asked. Equal membership among spacefaring civilizations, access to all Coalition technologies, protection under our laws, and a seat on the council that governs our alliance. President Clark exchanged glances with her advisors. I'll need to consult with remaining world leaders, but speaking for the United States, we accept. The following weeks transformed the resistance. Aldari ships delivered advanced technology to hidden bases worldwide. Earth scientists and engineers worked alongside alien counterparts, rapidly integrating the new knowledge. Dr. Bennett and Steve Martinez collaborated with Aldari scientists to develop larger versions of their shield-breaking weapon. If we can scale this up, Bennett explained to Murphy during a demonstration, we could potentially disable Krell shields across an entire city at once. Captain Wright led human pilots in training sessions with Aldari flight instructors. The alien pilots shared techniques for combating Krell ships that had been developed over decades of warfare. Their fighters rely on predictive targeting. An Aldari instructor explained as Wright's pilots watched simulations. If you change direction randomly every few seconds, their weapons can't lock on effectively. Meanwhile, Specialist Nelson worked with Aldari communications experts to improve their monitoring of Krell transmissions. One evening, she called an emergency meeting. We've intercepted and decoded Krell military orders, she announced to Murphy and the leadership team. They've called for reinforcements. A major Krell fleet is heading toward Earth. Arrival estimated in 7 days. Ambassador Lyra's face turned a darker shade of blue, their equivalent of paling with shock. That must be the Third Dominion fleet. Over 200 warships. More than we anticipated. Murphy turned to President Clark. Madam President, we need to accelerate our preparations. Clark nodded grimly. Alert all resistance cells worldwide. We're implementing the Global Defense Plan immediately. That night, as preparations intensified, Murphy stood with Wright on a mountainside overlooking the valley where human and Aldari worked together loading supplies into ships. 6 months ago, we were alone against an unstoppable enemy, Wright said quietly. Now we're part of something bigger than we ever imagined. Murphy nodded. 1 week to prepare for the biggest battle in human history. He looked up at the stars where the Krell fleet approached. Let's make sure we're ready. Global manufacturing centers worked around the clock. Former car factories now produced shield breaker weapons using Aldari technology. Computer chip plants built advanced targeting systems. Even small workshops contributed, making parts that were collected and assembled at central locations. Colonel Murphy oversaw the operation from what had once been NORAD, but was now the Earth Defense Command Center. Massive screens showed the status of preparations around the world, with green lights slowly replacing red as positions reported readiness. London base is online, called out a communications officer. Shield umbrella activated and operational. Murphy nodded. The Aldari had helped humanity install protective shields over key resistance strongholds, technology that would have seemed like magic 6 months earlier. Colonel Steve Martinez approached with a tablet. The moon base construction teams report they've completed the main platform ahead of schedule. The moon base had been Murphy's most ambitious plan. Using Aldari construction methods, they had built a staging area on the far side of the moon, hidden from Krell observation. It would serve as the launch point for their counterattack when the enemy fleet arrived. "Tell them to begin moving our ships into position," Murphy ordered. Captain Wright's squadrons launch in 12 hours. In the medical wing, Dr. Bennett supervised the distribution of protective gear to frontline troops. The suits, based on Aldari designs, but modified for human use, would shield soldiers from Krell weapons. "These won't make you invincible," she explained to a group of resistance fighters, "but they'll give you a fighting chance against their energy weapons." President Clark arrived at the command center that evening. Though exhausted from traveling between hidden command posts around the world, she stood straight as she addressed the leadership team. "I've spoken with all remaining government leaders," she said. "For the first time in human history, we have true global unity. Every nation, every person, stands together against the Krell threat." Ambassador Lyra joined them, her silver eyes reflecting the light from the tactical displays. "Our coalition vessels have moved into position throughout your solar system. When the Krell fleet arrives, they will not find Earth defenseless as they expect." Murphy activated a holographic display showing their battle plan. "The Krell will likely establish position behind the moon first, as they did during their initial invasion. That's where we spring our first surprise." The map zoomed in to show Wright's fighter squadrons hidden in lunar craters. "When their fleet passes overhead, our fighters attack from below, focusing on their engine systems." Meanwhile, Murphy continued, highlighting Earth-based positions, "Our ground forces will launch synchronized attacks on all Krell control centers on the planet. We'll activate the global shield breaker network, leaving their ground troops exposed." President Clark studied the plan. "And the Aldari fleet will remain hidden in the outer solar system until the Krell are fully committed," Lyra explained. "Then we attack from behind, trapping them between our forces and Earth's defenses." As the briefing concluded, early warning systems activated. A lieutenant called out, "Krell fleet detected passing Saturn's orbit. They're moving faster than expected. New arrival time, 18 hours. The room fell silent before erupting into focused activity. Murphy raised his voice over the noise. "Move up all timetables. Right, get your pilots to the moon now. All ground forces, prepare for immediate deployment." That night, resistance fighters around the world made final preparations. Some wrote letters to loved ones. Others cleaned weapons one last time. In the command center, Murphy reviewed the battle plan again and again, looking for any weakness. President Clark appeared on global broadcasts, her face determined as she addressed humanity. "For centuries, we fought one another over differences of nationality, religion, and ideology," she said. "Tomorrow, we fight as one people, the people of Earth. The Krell thought us primitive and divided. They will learn that humanity, when threatened, becomes stronger than anyone can imagine." As dawn broke, the first Krell ships appeared in Earth's skies. The largest alien fleet yet seen approached the planet. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. Silence filled the lunar command center as everyone watched the approaching Krell armada on the monitors. 200 massive warships moved in perfect formation toward Earth, their black hulls absorbing the sun's light. "They have no idea we're here," Captain Wright whispered, strapped into his flight suit beside his pilots. They waited in their modified fighters, hidden in the shadows of lunar craters. All squadrons maintained radio silence. Murphy ordered from Earth Command, "Wait for my signal." The Krell fleet passed directly over the lunar surface, exactly as predicted. The lead ships were already moving toward Earth, leaving the rear vessels exposed. "Now," Murphy commanded. Wright's fighters erupted from their hiding places, engines blazing as they rose toward the unsuspecting Krell vessels. Missiles designed with Aldari technology struck the enemy ship's vulnerable engine sections. "Direct hits," Wright shouted as explosions bloomed across the Krell formation. "Their rear guard is in chaos." On Earth, Murphy gave the next command, "Activate Global Shield Breaker Network." Dr. Bennett stood beside Martins at the main control station. Together, they initiated the worldwide system they had created. Giant emitters on every continent powered up simultaneously, sending invisible waves of radiation into the atmosphere. In orbit, the effect was immediate. Blue shields flickering around Krell ships suddenly turned purple, then vanished completely. Without their defensive barriers, the alien vessels became vulnerable to Earth's conventional weapons. All ground forces, begin your attacks. President Clark ordered from the command center. Around the world, resistance fighters emerged from hiding to strike at Krell bases. In the ruins of Paris, London, Beijing, and dozens of other cities, humans armed with Aldari weapons overwhelmed alien control points. The Krell commander, Vexnar, watched in disbelief as his invasion force lost its advantage. Impossible, he hissed as reports of failures flooded in. How did primitive humans develop this technology? His question was answered when sensors detected a new fleet approaching from the outer solar system. Aldari warships moving into attack position behind his forces. "We are trapped," his second-in-command reported. "Humans below, Aldari behind, and our shields are failing." Vexinar's 4 eyes narrowed. "Then we destroy this world before we lose it. Prepare the planet killer weapon." At Earth Command, Specialist Nelson intercepted the order. "Colonel, they're charging something called a gravitational disruptor. According to Aldari data, it could crack the planet's crust." Ambassador Lyra's expression turned grim. "We've seen this weapon used before. We must stop that flagship at any cost." Murphy made an instant decision. "Captain Wright, take your best pilots. Target the Krell flagship. You need to disable that weapon." Wright selected 5 pilots, including himself. "This is a one-way mission," he told them honestly. "Our job is to get close enough to deliver Martinez's special package." The package was a concentrated shield breaker bomb, designed to create a temporary hole in any remaining protection around the Krell flagship, allowing conventional explosives to reach the ship's core. The 6 fighters accelerated toward the massive command vessel at the center of the Krell fleet. Enemy fire surrounded them, destroying 2 fighters immediately. A third was hit but continued forward. The pilot, silent as flames, engulfed his cockpit. On the ground, Murphy led a final assault on the Krell headquarters in what remained of Washington, D.C. His team fought through alien defenders to reach the central command room, where they could disable ground-based defenses supporting the fleet. As Murphy's team breached the final door, they came face to face with a squad of Krell elite guards. A fierce firefight erupted, claiming the lives of half Murphy's soldiers before they secured the room. In space, Wright's remaining fighters reached the flagship. Deploying the package, he reported calmly as his ship took heavy damage. The shield breaker bomb detonated, creating a flickering hole in the flagship's defenses. The 2 surviving pilots aimed their fighters directly at the opening, accelerating to maximum speed. "For Earth," Wright said simply before his communication cut off. The resulting explosion tore through the Krell flagship, reaching its power core. The massive vessel broke apart, the gravitational weapon discharging harmlessly into space. With their commander dead and their fleet in disarray, the remaining Krell forces began to retreat. The Aldari ships pressed forward, preventing their escape. On Earth, humans emerged from hiding to see Krell ships falling from the sky. After months of occupation, the planet was being liberated. The cost had been enormous, but humanity had survived.